hope there's a question already. Oh, it's just Whitney saying good afternoon, everyone.
And do you realize that you're live, Leanne?
Oh, no. Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, I was just trying to think of an adjective to describe Leanne, our humble moderator.
Thank you.
Those of you who are regular attendees at our virtual user group meetings will know that I always will refer to Leanne as our humble and something else moderator. And so today I'm going to be referring throughout the broadcast to Leanne as our humble and outspoken moderator. And by the way, Whitney, hello, and thank you for being the impetus for that wonderful start to the November 2014 TAPS 3 virtual user group meeting, which you are lucky enough to be attending. We're laughing and we're kind of scrambling, and Leanne is talking when she shouldn't be, because I was going to call her our a blustery, humble and blustery moderator, because we have 60-mile wind gusts here right now, which means that the Generac may kick on because the power may go out. And so we have very carefully and very quickly positioned ourselves to be able to deal with that. We are all huddled around iPads. Mary Jo has abandoned her computer, her laptop that has a wireless connection. And so here we are, taking advantage of our power outage situation. We have just switched to a wireless telephone, and hopefully everybody can still hear us. And here comes the power again because the Generac has kicked in. So hold on one second, everybody, and we will get back in. But while we're doing that, Mary Jo is going to go ahead and dial in on our landline phones, and I'm going to keep talking because, hey, this is going to be a real fun time. The problem with the Generac we've discovered is that if the power comes back on, 30 seconds later the Generac goes off. And in a blustery, windy day like we have right now, the power might go off another 2 minutes later. So we may be interrupted, we may not. But enough about that. Let's talk about what we're talking about here. Today we are talking about cash receipts reports. Mary Jo will be talking about that report in her ongoing series on reports. And I will be talking about how to get information and help on all the various options that are out there for reporting. So those are our topics for today. Let's take a look here real quick at this. This is our GoToWebinar control panel that you're looking at on my screen right now. And this control panel controls your experience with the GoToWebinar session that you're currently in. Now, if you notice over here, we have an arrow button that looks like an arrow pointing to the right. And that button, when clicked, will cause this big pane here, this whole thing, to slide off the right-hand side of your screen. If you do that, this button will turn into a button that looks more like an arrow pointing to the left. Clicking it again will cause this panel to come back into focus. Why would you want that to come back into focus? Well, because you're shy and you have a question. This is the place to type them right here. Remember to hit send, type your question, remember to hit send. And Leanne, our humble, blustery, and outspoken moderator, will recognize that you have a question, and she will ask it on your behalf after interrupting Mary Jo and I at the opportune time. If you are feeling a little less shy and want to ask your question live, you can click this button here that looks like a hand with an arrow pointing upwards in front of it, and that will cause you to raise your hand in the control panel. Leanne will recognize that. She will interrupt Mary Jo or myself at the opportune time, and she will unmute your microphone and let you ask your own damn question. So you need to remember while we are answering your question that we may go astray. We may not answer the right question. You may have follow-up questions. If you raised your hand, that line of communication, that open channel, will remain open until we're done answering questions. If you have typed your question here and you need to ask follow-up questions, or you need to get us back on track because we're not answering the question that you intended to ask, just keep typing your questions here and keep remembering to hit send, and Leanne will keep interrupting us to keep us on track. Now, without further ado, we're going to hint that Mary Jo should come back in here because it's time for her to talk about the cash receipts report. Now, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope either that the power stays off and the Generac stays on, or that the Generac stays off and the power stays on. Either way, I think I hear Mary Jo.
I'm in.
And she is going to take over. Let me hit a few magic buttons here. There's one magic button. There's another magic button. And we're going to go into our sample set of data real quick. I'm going to let Mary Jo start talking about cash receipts while I get her to the right place.
Okay, so in our ongoing quest to tackle all of the Tab 3 reporting features that we have and all the reports and options that we have, today we're going to start with the cash receipts report. I'm going to talk about two screens right off the bat that are across the board, and almost every single one of our reports that we have, there are the client screen and our options screen, I believe. So as soon as he gets this up here, I'll show you. There are some parameters that you can choose in every single one that will let you narrow down the results of your reports. So in all of our tabs reports, we have these features. Here's our first one on client. So the first thing that we can do is we can narrow down the range of which clients we want to look at. If we leave these two fields open, then those will just give us all of the clients that fit the criteria of this report. So if I put in a range of clients, I could do, you know, client whatever to whatever, or the same client, or all the matters within a client. Maybe it's client 100.00 to 100.99. Whatever that is, I can narrow down my results. You can also search for clients with the name search. I can also narrow down my report by primary timekeeper, secondary, or originating timekeeper. So if I just want to see all of John Smith and he's timekeeper number 1, I could go in, or in our case, Michael Larson, or Jensen. I could just see all of Michael Jensen's clients in a certain date range that I'm going to choose on another screen. So you can really get specific here on what you're looking for. We also have the category. So if you want to just see all of the litigation cases, or all of the real estate cases, or all the bankruptcy cases, or whatever you've defined categories for, you can also just do this report for that. And again, in all of our tabs 3 reports, this is a very common screen. Down at the bottom, we have our billing frequencies. You just might want to see all of the clients that are within a monthly billing frequency, or quarterly 1, 2, or 3 if you've defined all the different quarterly sections. You also can do location. Now, some people use location for file location, you know, destroyed or whatever. You might want to do a report. Now, cash receipts is probably not one that you're going to use that for, but if you were using that for file location, you could just say, I just want to see all the cases that have destroyed as the location. Or if you do have 2 separate offices, maybe you want your Indy location and your Fort Wayne location, or whatever that would be. So you can go through by location. We also can do status. We can get very specific, and either we want all the active cases or inactive or both. It defaults to both. If you're using progress billing, you can use that, billable and non-billable, task-based billing clients, if you electronically file bills and use that feature. You also have the release to bill or not release to bill, bill on demand, whether they're email or mail statements. So you can get really specific then again on the status. The other thing that you can do is all of the cases that have an open or closed date within a range or within a certain, you know, maybe it's just 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, a quarter, a year. You can get so specific on when the cases were actually opened or closed. So that is a common screen in all reports that we have.
Now so this screen shows up everywhere.
Yes. So every single report that you open, with the exception of maybe a few, but almost every report we have has these parameters that you can select. So the other screen I'm going to show you is the sort tab. And almost every one of our reports has a sort tab. And some of them offer you a few different features, but for the most part, you're always going to have a report order. Primary timekeeper, secondary, originating. A few reports offer the working timekeeper that you can sort by that. You can sort by category, or this will give you a separate sort section on what you're going to report on. You also can do the secondary order, which this does vary from report to report. In this one, we have 2 options. We can either do it by client ID, or when it asks for the name search, that means it's going to be alphabetical by client. Now, if some reports may have some additional features there that you can do a secondary sort on, depending on what report it is. So look over there for your secondary sort. If you do none for the first and then you have a secondary sort, that's okay. None is just not going to give you any order at all. It's just going to put them all out into either client ID or name order. The totals at the bottom there. Again, some of these may be grayed out on certain reports because that feature just isn't available for that report. It just doesn't make sense for that particular report. This, you have a totals only. That's going to give you a line across the top that just, there's no client information. It's just going to give you all the totals. The subtotal by client, if I just left everything unchecked, it would give me the list by client, and each matter would be on that specific report. If I check the subtotal by client, if that client had 5 matters, it would then put a line item across that would subtotal all of those matters, so I'd get a total of the whole client then. The other option is just client subtotals only. You just want to see just the client subtotals. You don't want everything else, so that's an option. And then grand totals. At the bottom of the report, it will group everything, and you'll have a grand total page. You can do combinations of those. You can do totals and grand totals. You can do subtotal by client and grand totals. There's different combinations there as well. So let's get specific for our cash receipts. So before I do that, the other thing that you can do is on the right side, you can see where we have the OK, cancel, load, and save. You can choose parameters for a report, and you can hit the Save button and give it a name. So maybe we're going to do this cash receipts report, and I want to do it by attorney or by a date range, and I want to save those parameters so I don't have to check all these boxes again later. I can come in and hit Save, give it a name, and maybe I want that to be the default. Every time I come into cash receipts, I want these parameters I've chosen to come up. Then I would just mark that one and say make it the default. If I don't want those parameters to be the default, I just want to save this as a version of the cash receipts report, I would give it a name, and I just would make sure I don't check that box that says make it the default. And then I can, when I want to run that version of the report, I can hit the load button, and it will give me a list of all the reports that I have made parameters for, and I can choose the one that I want to run it for. So a lot of people get confused on that. If you have parameters that are chosen, you're like, why does it always run it this way? I never choose those things. I want to change it. You can just go in and hit Save after you've chosen the things that you want, give it a name, and then either make it the default or just save it so you can run it that way later. So let's dig into the cash receipts report and what's specific for that. So we have 2 different options here. We have a detail and a summary. The detail is going to give us a lot more information, obviously, about the different client matters and things. The summary is going to be just a condensed version. We can run it portrait or landscape. That's pretty obvious. The report date is just the date that you're now currently running it. And the criteria page is another option that's on most of our reports as well. Let's say that you chose 5 or 6 or 7 different parameters for this report. And if you print the criteria page, it'll print out that list of all the things that you just chose when you ran this one. So if you want to run it again later, you could then go back and look at that sheet that you printed out to get the right parameters. And again, then you might save it because it's something that you use all the time. Now, in this instance, the payment date is going to be the date that was actually entered as the payment date in the system. So if you got payments in on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and you entered them all in on Thursday, and Thursday was the date that you gave them, all those payments would go into the system with a Thursday date. Even though you received them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the date that you enter them in the system is the payment date. So you might do a range, Monday through Friday, or a month, or a day. You just want to see the payments for that certain time range. So that's what you're going to see when they came into the system. It's not when they were applied. It's not when they were on a statement. It's when they came into the system and when you entered them. The include is the breakdown applied payments. You have fees, expenses, and advances. So if you want to break those apart and see the difference in what that payment might be $100 and 50 might be fees and 25 might be expenses and 25 might be advances, and you want to see that breakdown, you can check that box. Underneath that, if we do the detail, you can also show the allocation breakdown by the timekeepers, and you also can see the cost types. If you've got transaction codes that you've put in the system and you've given them different cost types, like expenses can have postage, copies, advances might be court costs, filing fees, medical provider or medical request fees, things like that, you can actually break down those receipts that you came in by those different cost types and by timekeeper. You also can include any payment adjustments. If you've went back and you've refunded or done some payment adjustments with those payments, you can include those. Reference numbers is just like in all the other things. It'll give you the reference number of that particular payment. And then you also can include receipt type. So just to get a detail, let's put in, let's just leave it open for the payment date because I don't think we have too much. So I just want to see all the payments that were out there. We'll leave the breakdown of applied payments for the fees and expenses, and we'll include the adjustments. So let's see what that looks like. Yep, and I think, Paul, can you tell me what the sort was there again? Because I think we have the sort showing subtotal by client. So let's uncheck that and let's do just grand totals.
I want to interject here that I feel like one of those models whose hands are the only thing that you see on television because I am actually the one that's controlling the iPad.
She's liking the power here.
I like the power. I'm going mute again.
Just go ahead and actually do the power. Click grand totals. All right, and then let's say OK. So all I've shown here is I just want to see the grand totals for all the payments that have come in, and I do have the breakdown on. So now I've got the detail, I've got all the different payments. It's going to give me the individual payment line items, and it's going to break that down. Right now, I do not have the cost types, and I do not have the timekeepers shown. I'm just showing all of the payments, the date they came in, and a total for each matter. So let's go ahead and get out of that, and then let's show the difference if we do go back to our options. And now let's turn on that breakdown for the allocation and say OK. And I'll show you the difference here because now we're actually going to see all of the different timekeepers and what their portion of that payment is. Plus, over on the side, we're going to see all of the different cost types that they have. So we can break that down. So now let's get back out of it again, and let's do a summary. And let's go to our sort, and let's do our totals only and grand totals. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get just a line item across the top. I'm not going to have any clients. I'm just going to get totals. I just want a total of all the fees, costs, and advances and expenses that I brought in for that time range. And so it'll give me the total amount, the fees. I've even got finance charge, expenses, advances, and even my unallocated payments. So it's just an overview of the whole week or month or whatever it is. In this case, I just left it open because it's sample data. So I don't need all the client stuff. I just want to know what we brought in that week overall. If I were to go in and sort that by timekeeper, so let's just do it by primary and just say OK. Now I'll get a page or a breakdown for each timekeeper. So I've got Michael Larson is on page 1, so that's his total coming in. And again, I'm just doing a summary. I could do the detailed view with all the clients, and I could get Michael Larson's cases. Or if I go down, I'm going to get, you know, who's next, Ronald Anderson, and so on. So you can break that out by timekeeper this way, and that's by primary. I can't do this by working, but again, if you include the allocation for the timekeepers on that detail view, you're going to get the working timekeeper and what their portion was. And if you do the grand totals, it will also give you those grand totals at the bottom for each timekeeper. Now remember, when you're doing this report and it's showing the allocations of what came in, it's not, you're going to do this for a date range, and let's say you do it for a month. This is just going to be the payments that came in for that month. It's not coming in on what was billed that month. That's another report that we'll talk about later. This is just showing you straight up, you brought in this amount of money, this is how it broke down by timekeeper and by category, whatever parameters you chose. It doesn't matter when it was billed, this is just the money that came in for that time frame. So that's basically the cash receipts report. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul and let him go on with his part.
And I'm going to talk about how to find out what reports are what and how to find out more information about them. We've talked about cash receipts today. Last month we talked about a different report. And so it should be obvious to you, because we're going on with this in future months, that there are a lot of reports and tabs. How do you figure out which report you want for a specific purpose? And how do you get to information that's going to tell you about those reports? Well, it's really quite simple. If we go up into Help, and then we go into Documentation, we find a lot of information here, but the most important thing in my mind is this sample report packs that's going to show you all the different programs, tabs, AP, GL, Trust, Practice Master. And when you click on one of these sample reports, it's going to load the PDF document that is the sample report pack for that particular program. So here we are with tabs, and as we scroll through here, we're going to see a list of all the reports with a description. We're going to see a table of contents as we get down a little bit further. And when we actually get into one of those reports, here's the table of contents. When we actually get into one of the reports, it's going to show us exactly what it looks like. It's going to talk about the definitions of the different fields it's going to ask for. So this is kind of a printed out or reviewed on your screen, but this is kind of a generic catch-all of everything that's available in tabs. We happen right now to be looking at the tabs 3 sample report pack. This is a great thing to print out and kind of keep by your side because it's a huge document. This is just tabs. It's 136 pages. So this is going to show you an example of every report. It's going to talk about each bit of information it asks for before you run the report, and it's going to tell you what effect the different choices you have in selecting and specifying that information will have on the report. Very good thing to look at, but how do you even find out which report you might be interested in? Well, if we go into Help and Documentation, one of the things that we see here, Mary Jo, help me here. Where's the KB article? Am I in the wrong place?
Sample report pack.
And no.
What do you?
The KB article with the list of reports? It was under tabs, thank you. That's right. That's it. Okay. If you know the secret, remember, you can always come back and look at this video. If you click under tabs and then go down here to the report finder, this, I think, is the coolest KB article that STI has, a KB article, knowledge-based article. It's going to take you out to the support site. It's going to take you to it's actually a KB article that's interactive. It's not one that you would print out and look at, although you can. It's more one where you say what you want on the report. And now, right now, nothing is checked. And so down below, we have a list of all the reports that have that fit this criteria because we haven't specified any kind of criteria. So this basically is a list of every report. Now, let's say in our report we want billed hours, and we want billed fees, and we also want write-ups and write-downs. By selecting these 3 things, this list is closed up to the point where it then shows you only the reports that have all 3 of those things. Now, there's one specific thing in here that I want to talk about. Maybe they did, oh, here it is, period-based. Let me talk about this for a second. There are 2 period-based reports that include these 3 criteria. What is a period-based report? Well, let's think of it this way. The period-based reports are the old reports. They go way back, and they are not, in my mind, I have an opinion, this is mine, they are not nearly as good to work with, easy to work with, user-friendly. They're harder to understand. Why? You know, at the end of the month, in tabs, you still advance your month. Advancing your month is from when you, for instance, advance the month at the end of November, you are saying it is no longer November. From now on, everything that I want you to collect should be going into the December bucket. Think of it like a bunch of buckets, 12 of them, with each one representing a month. And when you advance your month in tabs, you're saying, okay, stop putting stuff in the November bucket and start putting it in the December bucket. A non-period-based report, which is, when I uncheck this, it's going to show me the 2 period-based reports plus the ones that are non-period-based. That's kind of how you have to use it. Those are what we call real-time reports. What that means is whatever date range you specify for whatever it is that you're showing is going to be what takes effect, not when you close the month. Now, let's walk through that for a second. It's November 30th. Bob's entering his time, and when he gets done entering his time, he goes home. December 1st comes. Sylvia, the administrator, comes in, and the first thing she does is she advances the month to December. Bob comes back in on December 1st or December 2nd or December 7th or sometime in January, anytime. And he goes and he says, I forgot to put in that time entry from November of 2014. I'm going to go put in these 5 hours. If you have real-time reports, non-bucket-based, non-period-based, and you go and reprint that report that shows the November productivity or the November realization or whatever, that 5 hours that Bob entered is going to magically appear in that report because he has entered it, and it is now within that date range. If you print a period-based report for November, it will still show exactly what it showed before, because even though Bob entered that time for November, he entered it at a time when the system was pushed through to a different month, and that's where that productivity information is going to show up. So if you're still using period-based reports, you may want to use this tool to decide which ones you're using are still period-based, and you can tell which ones are period-based by simply unchecking everything and then checking period-based, and it will show you all the period-based reports that still exist in tabs. I recommend that you consider getting away from this, and that instead you go to date-based reports. Now, the problem with date-based reports, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's actually an advantage. But for people that are used to period-based reports and are used to a system where you close the month, is that if you do enter that time for November in December or January and nobody knows about it, nobody reruns the report, it's not going to show up. But the way I see it is you don't want that November time showing up in a December period-based report or a January period-based report. You want it at least to stick back where it is, and if the future reports that you print are more accurate, I say that's the way to go. Now, that could be a whole topic all by itself, period-based reports, but I just wanted to point out that that is one thing that you can use this report, this special KB article for, is to tell which reports are period-based and which aren't. So if you wanted how much somebody owes, plus how many hours were billed, and how many fees were billed, and what the write-ups and write-downs were, then these are the two reports that are going to show it based on those 4 checkboxes. Very cool. And that is actually KB article R11612, but you can also get to it by going into Help, Documentation, expanding the tabs, or any of the other, I think it's going to show up under Trust Accounting. Well, maybe it doesn't, I lied. It's the report finder right here. Okay. Now, another thing you can do is right from within Help, whether you get here through Documentation or whether you go through Help Topics, is you can simply either go to the contents and look at the reporting section, or you can go to the index and you can type whatever report you want, cash receipts report, for instance, and it will give you all sorts of information about it, including sample reports from the sample report pack, but only the ones that you're looking at, in this instance, the cash receipts report, and even videos. And then it will also explain all the screens you're going to have to fill in. Here are the 3 tabs that Mary Jo just went over with you. And if you click on those tabs, either by clicking on the tab there or by clicking on the link to the tab down here, you will get to a description of all the fields that are in that tab and what does this allocation breakdown mean. Bam, there you go. So, some very important stuff here, how to get to that knowledge base article that is the report finder, how to get to the sample reports, how to get to the report specific information, how to get to the sample reports for that specific report, and even how to get to a video that would give you more detail about that particular report. I'm not going to do the video. Well, I will. I'll just long enough to pause it.
While you're getting the video up, Paul, just another thing to add, that sample report pack is really cool because it will give you screenshots of all the parameters that you could choose and then what that would look like. So if you're not quite sure, do I want a detail or a summary? Do I want this or that? That sample report will show you like all the different versions that you could get for the cash receipts report. So it's really kind of cool. So before you run it and have to run it, you could go just look at that and find the one you want.
Exactly. And that is all I have to tell you. I do want to show you one thing that in our confused state we kind of skipped by. I'm going to rerun that cash receipts report that Mary Jo was showing you. And I'm going to show you that when you are previewing a report, and I'm going to get one that actually has client level detail, so I'm going to do the detail report. When you are previewing a report, you can drill down. Now most often you're drilling down to the client. So I've done something wrong.
You got to go to the source and take off the totals only.
Thank you.
Totals only. Grand totals is fine.
Yep, exactly. So if I rerun this report with some detail and show all the different payments we've received for all the different clients, you'll notice when I move past one of these lines that it becomes yellow. And I think it's even true that if I move past it over here, no. Hold on one second. Mary Jo's telling me about another thing that I could do, which is to show the reference numbers. Okay, where I was headed with this was that you can drill down to the client. So you could, for instance, pull up this client and see how they're set to bill, what their billing frequency is, things like that. But then these are all archives, so they're not going to be pulled up. If we had whipped payments, which I'm sure we do, let's go see if I can find one. There's one. Then I can actually go through to the payment and look at it right there from the cash receipts report. So this is called drilling down. Most of the reports have some sort of drill down available, meaning that if I am referencing the payment itself and showing the reference numbers, or if I'm listing fees and showing the reference numbers, or if I've got something that's listing clients or something that's listing contacts, those are all things that I can drill down to when I highlight that particular field and notice that it's yellow and click on it. So that's that. That is reports in general, how to find information about them, how to find the right ones, and that's Mary Jo's report on the cash receipts report. What are we doing next month? Well, we're talking about the 3 payment allocation reports. Mary Jo's going to continue her report-oriented theme, and she's going to talk about the 3 reports that specifically deal with payment allocation. Now, we actually saw some payment allocation here, but there are reports, aside from just reporting about receipts, that's very specifically report on payment allocation. She'll talk about those. And I'm going to talk about trust accounting and the need to set up an administrative account, which is where you log all that stuff that's not related to a trust, like the interest that comes into the account or the fees that may come into that account. You need a place to put them so that you can then transfer money in from your operating account or transfer interest out to, I know a lot of your states you have to send that to the state bar. This is the administrative account is how you do that. I do want to mention that version 15, if you're still on version 15, it is being sunsetted, I believe, in June or July. I believe it's June of 2015. What that means is that come 2015 and month of June, if you're still on version 15, you will not be able to get support for it. So if you're on version 15, you want to seriously consider getting up to the latest version, upgrading your software. Maybe you're on maintenance and you just have never really applied the updates. Maybe you're not on maintenance and therefore you didn't get them free of charge and you're going to have to update and pay to get up there. In any event, it makes sense if you're on 15 to get past 15 to get up to version 17.1, which is our current version, because 15 will be sunsetted middle of next year. And then I also want to point out that at our website, which is www.attorneycomputersystems.com, and that is systems as in plural, we have all this content. So if you get to our website and then scroll down a little, on the left you will see our 3 virtual user group meetings. You'll see our Coffee Pot webinar series, our eVite video series, and the Paul and Mary Jo show, plus tabs, Practice Master and World Docs virtual user group meetings. If you click on one of those, you will see, if it's a live meeting like the virtual user group meetings, you'll see when the next one is. Here's where we are right now. A link to register, but beyond that, you will see recorded versions of every other one that we did since we started recording them, and that was a long time ago. We have literally hundreds of videos on our website, most of them still relevant, and we've started a curation process to kind of get rid of the ones that may not be relevant to people that have current software, or at least put them in a category where you can search specifically for version 17, version 16, things like that. So right now, we've got all these videos there ready for you. Please take advantage of them. Please do whatever you can to learn as much as you can. We want that to happen, and of course, I'm sure you want that to happen. So everybody have a good afternoon. If you're near us or in some place that has 60-mile gusts of wind like we do, hold on to something, and we will see you next one. Bye-bye.